Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Timen Lu, and I'm a proud mother, senator on the Downtown Student Council, and an credit student at CCSF. On behalf of the Downtown Associated Students Council and Office of Student Activity, I'm very excited to welcome you to our first Leadership Fireside Chat this semester. For those who are not familiar with this leadership development program, the purpose of this leadership chat is to equip CCSF students and student leaders with a wealth of leadership insights, tips, and strategies. We hope you will have a better understanding of leadership in action from a diverse group of effective and seasoned leaders across various industries. Before we introduce today's speaker, Richard Cooper, I'd like to share a few details about the program. First, those who attend 7 out of the 10 Fireside Chats during the academic year are eligible to receive a certificate of participation at a recognition event in the spring semester. Every section is open to all students, even if you decide not to participate in the certificate part of the program. Since you have registered for today's section, thanks to Zoom, we have a record of your attendance. Nothing further is needed on your end to mark your participation. Next, please note that these sections will be recorded. The links will be posted on CCSF's Student Activities Office website for you to view later or to share with others so that you may benefit from this learning opportunity as well. If you have a question about this Leadership Fireside Chat program and the certificate of participation, please email studentactivities at ccsfly@mail.ccsf.edu. I would also like to share a little bit regarding today's format. After these opening remarks, Geisce Ly, the Interim Vice Chancellor of Academic and Institution Affairs, will interview today's speaker about 50 minutes. If you have questions for Richard, please enter them into the chat directly to Amy, who will be assisting with the question and answer portion. At around 5 p.m., there will be a Q&A opportunity for Richard to respond to your question. During the last 10 minutes of our together, we will invite you to share what you've learned today that will help you in your leadership development journey. I'm now going to turn it over to Jose Kirkby. He's going to share about our leadership program.
Hello, everyone. Welcome, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Jose Kerkebe, and I am an executive and team coach and ESL student at CCSF. I am delighted to introduce today's speaker, Richard Cooper. Richard enjoyed a 45-plus year career of progressively responsible position in credit union management, including 10 years as the CEO of what is now Community First Credit Union in Mendocino County, focused on outreach to underserviced community, providing access to vital financial services, consumer, mortgage, and small business lending to diverse groups that include recent immigrant, farms workers, Native American, tribal groups, and the LGBTQ communities. Throughout his career, he managed to stay involved as a volunteer in a wide variety of community organizations, service organizations, and nonprofits. He is most proud of his years of service as a member of the foundation board at LA Valley College and Mendocino College, providing access to scholarship for the students. He recently finished board service at the Diversity Center in Santa Cruz. Richard currently resides with his partner and a house full of dogs in Palm Springs. Now, I would like to turn this over to Vice Chancellor Geisce Ly, who will be chatting with Richard about his leadership journey and experiences. Jesse, the floor is now yours.
Thank you, Jose, and thank you, Timon, for providing information about this Leadership Fireside Chat program. I just want to, first say thank you to all the participants who joined today's program. You're going to learn a lot. Richard is a dear friend of mine. I've known him since 2008. I'm just keep, a list of wonderful, good people, and Richard is definitely on my list of, got to keep in touch with Richard. Even 15 years later, we're still very close. So again, I'm just so glad that Richard, you're able to join us today. So I just want to say again, thank you for making time out of your schedule, because Richard lives in Palm Springs. He could be out playing golf, playing pickleball, playing tennis right now. But again, thank you for spending this Friday afternoon with us.
This is a lot more fun. I really appreciate the opportunity, and thank you.
So again, participants, I'm going to be asking Richard some questions. And again, if you have questions later on, please again enter those questions to Amy, and she will certainly compile a list of questions so that your questions can get asked as well. Okay. So without further ado, again, we're excited to learn more about Richard's career path and journey. Again, he has a very accomplished list of things that he's been a part of, and again we're gonna only take a slice of his career journey today, because we could keep talking to Richard for another 2-3 hours. so Richard, you're retired now, but again you've done a lot in your 45 plus years, so tell us more about your career path, and again how you got to where you are.
Well, starting with something I think that's relevant to where all you're sitting these days. I started after high school. I did not plan well for my college future, and so I ended up at Anchorage Community College in Anchorage, Alaska, and got the start of my education there. One of the reasons I'm still very dedicated to the whole community college process, because I see such huge value in what community colleges do in small communities up to large cities like where you guys are. So from that point, at some point in my early working career, I had the opportunity to go to work for a credit union in Alaska, frontline service, teller, member services, that kind of thing. And from that point, I built a career that had lasted, like I said, 45 years. I mentioned earlier to everyone that I live close to the airport, and we have fighter jets going over today. So if you hear some background noise, it's our government in action. Anyway, had a wonderful career in the credit union world up through the ranks. Started, like I said, member services, moved into consumer lending. After that, had an opportunity to be in branch management in the little tiny community of Juneau, Alaska, which is the state capital, but very remote and very small town. Got involved in credit union marketing after that because the branch did well. Moved to California with an offer to be able to get a better marketing job. And from that point forward, was in marketing-oriented positions until I took a sidestep for a few years. I actually worked for a credit union-based ad agency. We did the brochures and direct mail campaigns and that kind of thing for credit unions, as well as for housing developers. After that period, I went back to credit union management and spent the rest of my career in the credit union trenches, working my way up. Had probably the best job I ever had as director of community and government relations, or as my boss said, used to call me the VP of good and evil, and really found my niche and the ability to take my life and what I found important in the world and take my credit union and the credit union's checkbook along with me to really start working in the community and seeing what value was there. And because of that job, I got a call from a recruiter from the San Francisco area at some point saying he had this opening for a CEO in a small town in Northern California. And I was like, cold weather, small town, I don't know. I went up and took a look and interviewed with the board. And a few months later, I was the CEO of a $75 million credit union. During the time that I was there, We grew from 75 million to almost 250 million. Really did well with the community development side, became a community development financial institution, which is a special designation from the Treasury Department. Also had a wonderful designation as Juntos Avanzamos, which indicated that we were friendly and really worked hard to meet the needs of the Latino and farmer community. And as mentioned, we were very proud to bank 4 of the local Native American tribes and had outreach to LGBTQ community, all in small town Northern California. So, really was able to take me and my concerns and my, my desire and my heart, needs to be able to do better and have the world be a better place for more people and make it a big part of my career. It was beautiful. And retired and have since been doing some executive temp jobs, which is a fun part of being a retiree. I know I'm not the only one in my peer group that's done this. I was a director of tourism for the county Mendocino for 6 months. I was an interim CEO at a credit union that was looking for another credit union or for a new manager. And more recently, I was in Santa Cruz assisting with some financial troubles that a credit union had there and bringing them back to profitability. So I've had some fun experiences since retirement.
Definitely a very prolific career. So before we dive further,
Lots of opportunities.
Yeah, and again, we'd love to hear more about your experiences. But for the folks on the call, again, folks are coming to CCSF from different parts of the world. So Richard, can you say more about the differences between a bank and a credit union, a community credit union? Because in some countries that does not exist. So what are some differences?
And credit unions are, big in Europe, in parts of Africa, starting to develop in parts of Asia, but started in Germany and really grew in Canada and the US, starting with the turn of the last century. Was a huge push in the 30s and 40s in the US to build credit unions. And credit unions initially were employee-based, church-based, were based with a group that had a common bond, was the official term. But the big difference between a credit union and a bank is a credit union is owned by the folks that deposit and do business with it. So it's a cooperative, it's a type of nonprofit, although the expectation is that there needs to be income to provide the services that they do. But the great thing about a credit union is that unlike a bank, banks report to board of directors that are concerned about return for shareholders, and then the shareholders may not be members of the community, may not even be people from this country. Bank of America, Wells Fargo, Chase has huge foreign investment in, as an example. Your average community credit union, though, is based locally, is run by a board of directors that comes from the community, is operated by folks that live in the community and is focused on, trying to do better for the community that it specifically serves.
Thank you for sharing that. It's similar to a community college, right? A community college is a local community.
Perfect example, Jesse, because it's the same kind of thing. We're not here for this a larger global purpose. It's more focused on the local community, trying to fill a niche that quite often is not served well by other organizations.
So Richard, you alluded to the fact that you pretty much dedicated your life, decades, right, to community credit union instead of going to a bank. So what inspired you to go towards this career path as opposed to going towards Wall Street?
Interesting you should say that, because I was never aimed toward Wall Street. I was originally wanted to be a community college instructor. I came from a family, my father was a service writer at a car dealership and my mother was an elementary school teacher. Our next door neighbors were both community college instructors and they had a really great life. They worked 3 of the 4 semesters and, in the summer they commercial fished. And I thought, if I stay in Alaska, I could work the other ones, leave in the wintertime and come back for the time I enjoyed. So when I started going to school, I was going to do English and history. I thought that would be, my highest and best. Got a summer job at the local credit union and, never seemed to escape. And part of it was, it was a great job. There was always an opportunity to advance. But fairly early on, I saw, wow, what we do really makes a difference. It's the first car, the first home, financial education so people understand how to use a credit card or how to open a checking account, working with a senior citizen that's confused about, how their finances work, widows and folks that, have never handled their own money. One of my greatest opportunities for education, in fact, came from Geisce. I did a wonderful consumer literacy course at College of the Redwoods when I was up in Fort Bragg, and enjoyed that class more than maybe a lot of other things I've done. But you could really see where you could benefit folks, and over time, it's like, I'm going to stick with this, and then it got better, and it got better, and then it was time to retire.
If you can stay
No
retired.
Wall Street for me.
So Richard, we're going to try to get a better sense of how you think as a leader. So tell us more about your leadership approach, philosophy, and or mindset.
Okay. Well, I think my approach is very collaborative. I really enjoy working with people. As I was coming up through the ranks, the best, senior leadership that I worked with were folks that asked lots of questions, were looking for answers before they had solutions that came just from them. And so I think that collaboration and team building process is a really important part, especially in smaller organizations. Larger organizations, it gets kind of crazy, and it's a whole different bailiwick. You've got other things to be concerned about. But one of the great things about an organization that's 50 to 100 people, everybody, and you can count on certain folks to really deliver. So I think that's one of the biggest things. Building relationships within the board of directors and within the community you serve is really important. And that relationship building is something that I think has served me extremely well in career advancement, as well as my community service. It's a wonderful opportunity to get to know people and to understand people better. And every lesson you learn in every aspect of your life makes you a better leader, makes you a better coworker. And from that standpoint, I think that was important as well. But I think the other thing, though, is like the honesty and that trust that comes from closely working with folks. You can't mess with that. And I've worked with folks that did mess with it, and the outcomes were unpleasant and uncomfortable for everyone involved. Mm-hmm. And early on, I saw a couple of folks that I loved and trusted do bad things, and it was disturbing. And I swore that I was never going to be that person, and I was going to encourage and provide a place that folks could flourish without having to go down a bad path. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the other thing that's very important, especially in today's world.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, I'm very inspired. Again, you're creating a safe space, right? You're creating, opportunities for folks to grow. And I'm sure you've been mentoring a lot of folks. So tell us more about your core values and beliefs in terms of what drives you, right? To sort of wake up in the morning and just go to work and work hard for the community that you are part of.
Well, one of the things that I've always felt like I needed to give back was that lots of people gave me opportunities. So as a young person, I was, working hard, trying to work up through the ladder. I would work the extra hours. I would show up. I'd say, can I, take on that extra project, that kind of thing. So as I became a manager and a leader myself, was always looking to find those same people and give them the same opportunities that were given me, because it was, definitely time to give back. So from an internal standpoint, I'd say that's my highest and best thing. I love to see folks grow. And I know a lot of leaders get really offended when folks move on. And I would quite often sit with somebody and say, this sounds like it's a really good opportunity for you. I'm going to miss you like you would never believe, but I am so proud of you and so excited for you to be able to move on to this opportunity. And when you come from that spot, people develop a lot more loyalty than they do, for lots of other reasons. So I think that that's a good thing. Mm-hmm. The other side of it, though, is, what really got me into the credit union thing is just seeing the difference we could make. Mm-hmm. I'd say that something that really stuck me at the end of my career that was, wow, okay, it did make a difference. During the 2008 housing crisis, working for a small community credit union, we didn't want to foreclose on people. We didn't want to take folks' houses back. And when people would start having problems, I personally would give them a call, and they were surprised. It's like, wow, the CEO's calling me. And I said, yeah, it's like, you're important. I mean, we don't have a lot of, $400,000 or $500,000 loans on the books. Your home loan is a big deal for our credit union. Well, I don't have a job, or the house isn't worth what I paid for it, or whatever. And so we'd sit down and talk about, you need a place to live, right? Well, yeah. It's like, well, so could you rent a house for any less than what you're paying in your house? Well, probably not. So why would you want to leave your home? And I had two folks that came up to me at my retirement party, made me cry, saying that, they were able to maintain their home, and they still had a place for their family to live, thanks to the efforts that I had personally done for them. Made the whole 45 years worthwhile.
Wow. I mean, that's just two examples. I'm sure you have.
Well, yeah. And little things like, one of the things folks, go, oh, car loans as an example, it's not really a big deal, but it is a big deal. It's in particular, it's a big deal if you're a low income wage earner that has an opportunity for a job, but it's across town and you have to get there, and you have to get there reliably. And, bus service is what it is. And, that kind of thing, that first car, that transportation vehicle that gets somebody to the job that they really need, so important. Farm worker that needs the truck to get to the the various and sundry farm jobs that they do, priceless. So even something as small as an auto loan can really make a difference for the right person.
Right. So Richard, again, in your 45 plus years, from Alaska to Southern California, to rural Northern California, to Santa Cruz, you're pretty geographically mobile, right? You moved to several different places. So what advice would you give, career advice, right, for folks who are thinking long-term, short-term career decisions? Because again, some folks don't move, and that could preclude them, foreclose other opportunities.
Yeah.
So what are your advice for folks who are, again, thinking about, should I stay, should I leave, should I go to another state?
I think, keeping your options open is one of those things that will always provide more opportunities. Anytime, even in a large community like San Francisco, there is a finite box of opportunities because of who's there and the type of community it is and that kind of thing. After having lived and grown up in rural Alaska, I lived in a homestead when I was a kid. The thought of going back to a rural small town in Northern California when that job came open as a good example was, I don't know about this. Best decision I ever made. It was one of those things that was really it was life-changing. But so was moving from Alaska to Los Angeles in June of 1980. I remember that. I can remember a lot of that the day that I arrived. It was, it was life-changing because at the time I had been in Kodiak, which is a small island in the Gulf of Alaska. We had a branch that served the Coast Guard. I worked for a federal employees credit union at that time. And I had been stationed in Kodiak for a while and had just spent a good portion of the winter in Fairbanks. And boy, going to Los Angeles, palm trees, warmth. And again, great move, gave me an opportunity to do something. So, the life experiences you gain from being open to different stuff, like, going to a small town or going to a big city, going across country, going to another state, are personally invigorating and can build your knowledge base. But as far as what it can do for your career, it can be life-changing.
I agree. I moved to New York.
You personally, Jesse, you've moved too. So I know.
Yeah, I moved to New York, Pennsylvania, and then Michigan. So at the end of the day, definitely want to come back to California. But again, thank you for sharing that advice. So Richard, in terms of you worked with a lot of folks over the years, and you see talent. So who stands out? So when you're trying to identify talent and identify the next star performer, who stands out? What makes them stand out?
Well, and that can be very different for different kinds of positions, because sometimes you need that person that's, the out front leader that is, the star of the team. It's the quarterback, the folks, the one that, everybody has their light shined on. And those are the obvious ones. The ones that are maybe a little less obvious are the ones that, you can count on, that put in the extra hours, that do the extra reading, that come to you with the interesting solutions that you never even thought of, might be. I can think of in particular a couple of people that the credit union community first team. I had a compliance lady that was, compliance is huge in financial services, and finding a qualified compliance person that understands all the complex federal and state regulations that have to do with consumer finance in a small town, impossible. I promoted somebody from the front line, somebody that was always the one that read and understood things a little bit better, and gave her a chance for a career. She's now the senior vice president at a regional bank in charge of compliance. Right person, right time. She was willing to study. She was willing to go the extra mile, and took a odd opportunity and turned it into an amazing career for her. So it really depends on the individual and the situation, but it's always looking for that person that just stands out for whatever reason, that's willing to do a little bit more work, that's willing to do a little bit more reading, that comes to you with the solutions. Those folks are priceless in management.
Mm-hmm. So a lot of folks, of course, we need to start at the bottom of the ladder, right? They need to put in their time and sort of work their way up. Any strategies for folks besides just work hard, do good work? I mean, what are some sort of best practices for new employees and even seasoned employees in terms of the career mobility? What are some best practices that you think the folks on the call, right, on this Zoom call should always remember?
I think one of the things that's really important in this is to ask questions. You can report every day and do a good job and that kind of thing, and be very tunnel focused in your job. But again, thinking of some of these folks that in my career that have really moved up and moved forward, they're the ones that ask questions like, why do we do that? What's that rule about? Why is that policy that way? I had a member come in and ask me about this and that, and I didn't have a good answer for him. So what do I tell him the next time I get back? Those kind of people are the ones you go, let's keep an eye on that person. So, and the other side of it is continual education. I'll be a little sheepish to admit that I never did end up getting a college degree. But I have always read and gone to the extra schools and gone to extra classes. I have been through compliance school and marketing school and a variety of financial seminars and that kind of thing, all designed to make me, a better credit union person. Accumulated hours, probably more than a doctorate degree. But in the meantime, I don't have that sheepskin to hang on the wall, but I never stopped learning. And I think that's the other thing I would say is that always, take advantage of every educational opportunity you have. If your company offers educational reimbursement, check and see, what would be the next step to get you to the next job that you're interested in. But also, these days, so much is involved with online learning and stuff. Look at what's available in the company's, website or in their library of learning opportunities. Find out about stuff you don't know about. Probably the best example I can give is that if you remember my story about how I started in credit unions, very operational background, and moved into marketing and was, used my people skills. But I didn't have a finance degree. I didn't have I'm not an accountant. And when you're in financial services in particular, a good portion of the CEOs in larger financial institutions in particular have come up through the ranks from the finance, the CFO side of the operation. Never had that opportunity. But early on, when I was a marketing guy, I used to say, well, I know the return on investment is really important. So what can I do to provide better numbers? And I'd work with our CFO to be able to provide a return on investment of a marketing campaign. And then, spent some time with her and said, so tell me about this stuff. I know, we have allowance for loan losses, and I know we've got, these things and their governmental requirements. Tell me more. And would learn. So by the time that I had the chance to be a CEO, board was a little concerned. And I found out afterwards that the guy that was the number 2 candidate was a CFO. But I was able to answer the questions because I'd spent the time, I'd learned what the credit union's, financial side should look like, and why things were the way they were, what potential problems were there. The more you know about things that aren't part of your job, the better you're going to be as an overall general employee.
Yeah, I absolutely wholeheartedly agree. Absolutely. So let's learn from you in terms of your 10 years as a CEO of a community credit union. So what were some challenges that you faced, and what what do you want to share in terms of the CEO sort of with well of wisdom?
Okay. Well, the biggest one, obviously, in financial services, Jesse, you'll remember that we moved to Mendocino County, both of us, in 2008. It's all history for the young people that are on this call, but at the time, 2008 was one of the worst financial crashes that we've had in the country, certainly in my lifetime. And the very first year I was at the credit union, we lost $1 million. Not, the track record you want to have as a brand new CEO. But it was all, it was stuff that was not my fault. There was a huge assessment from the government for the deposit insurance fund that we had to pay that was almost $700,000 or $800,000. Our corporate credit union had gone belly up and was in receivership. We lost $500,000 in uninsured deposits with them. So with things like that, happened before I started or were totally out of my control. But in the meantime, it's like, makes you a little nervous. And so learning that process and understanding what you can control and doing damage control on things when they do go wrong that, aren't within your control, figuring out how to make sure that the organization learns things so that, if there's an ability to not have the same thing happen. So that was part of it. I mentioned earlier that we worked really hard to keep folks in their homes, so we didn't have the foreclosure rate that a lot of places did. We built a lot of loyalty. One of the great things was that Mendocino County, if you know anything about it, is a bunch of aging hippies for a lot of the population there. And there was a huge a backlash to the big banks, the Wells Fargos and the Chases and the Bank of America. And there was demonstrations regularly in Mendocino County about, getting the big banks out of our area and that kind of thing. And I'm almost embarrassed to say that I'm proud to say that we closed both the Bank of America branch in Fort Bragg, as well as the Bank of America branch in Lakeport and in Ukiah during my tenure, because our credit union took over that business. So that was, learning when there's opportunities to be able to grab them. But the other side of it is that if you're looking to be a manager in any shape or form, especially in California, learning to manage people. Absolutely, one of the, if not the most important thing, understanding HR rules and regulations, understanding, the pitfalls of being a manager and dealing with those kind of things, again, priceless. But the other side of it is working with folks to minimize the potential for losses and problems, because there will always be that bad egg employee who's going to sue the credit union because that's what they do. But there's the other credit union employee that maybe has had an injury on the job, or maybe had some problems and is working through things, or maybe was harassed by another employee, or any number of other things. Intervention and understanding remedy and understanding best ways to work through those kind of situations, again, priceless, and one that will save you and your organization a lot of money for lawsuits and problems and that kind of thing down the road. So definitely learning the people management side.
Absolutely. So Richard, you again done a lot with regard to serving underserved minority populations. You've done a lot of outreach work. So say more in terms of why it's so important to you, and what others need to do in the future, so that again, when we think about underserved populations, those folks needs are also being addressed.
Well, I'll start off with saying that today I'm an old white guy, and that's not necessarily the most wonderful part of our population. Old white guys have a bad rap, and much of it is sadly well deserved. But I also come from a extremely poor background. My grandparents on my mom's side were immigrants from Germany. And when I was a kid, I had the blessing of having great grandparents and grandparents that both spoke German at home. So those of you who have, I see lots of Asian and Latino faces on here that are used to, that other language that is at home and then dealing with the other language when you go to school and that kind of thing. I had the unique experience of being one of those people. I also had the unique experience of my mother being a divorcee in the 50s, which was very unusual. And I went to the same elementary school that my mother taught at, and I didn't have the same last name that she had. And that, was an interesting point. So, that, and then, as I mentioned, the LGBTQ environment, growing up as a young gay kid in a rural environment wasn't necessarily fun. So I had lots of chances to see what it was like to be the underdog. And when I had a chance to make a difference for other underdogs, it was definitely, a blessing. And certainly here in California, one of the things, having lived in a variety of areas, you see what the immigrant community here does, and the huge commitment and the huge investment and the huge amount of support that our recent immigrant community provides. And yet they're not provided with, access to financial services. They're not provided with financial literacy. They're not provided with access to even basics like a credit card or a debit card or a checking account. And so the community credit unions that have recognized that opportunity to provide services to those folks are, it's been huge. And I've really been able to see that we've been able to make a difference in so many things, getting folks on, regular, having a place to cash your paycheck, so they're not paying a paycheck provider. Having a place to start a savings account rather than putting the money under the mattress. Getting that access to that first credit card or debit card, getting access to the first auto loan or home loan, all really priceless opportunities. And then moving to Mendocino County, one of the things, if you ever have a chance to look at the, a very sad story, to see what the Native American community was treated, and especially in the late 1800s and the early 1900s. And the tribal organizations that are in Mendocino and Lake County in particular that are really trying to make a difference for their tribal members, trying to bring income, education, opportunities to build wealth and build community place. They're doing some wonderful work, and it was an honor to get to be on the Northern Circle Indian Housing, tribal board. It was an honor to be able to be, when I went over to the Habamatatold in Lake County and said, we'd love to take your banking relationship from this East Coast bank that's charging you fees and not helping you. So it was a wonderful opportunity. And in the meantime, you're building those relationships and making those friends and making those partnerships that will be crucial as life goes on. And so from that standpoint, all wonderful things. And then more recently, like I said, in Santa Cruz, I finally had a chance to work with my own community, do some outreach to the LGBTQ community, and provide services there for youth education, and we were big supporters of the Diversity Center and all the efforts that they were doing. And one of the things that interesting in Santa Cruz, that included LGBT seniors that looked a lot like me. So it's kind of interesting and fun.
Yeah, well, on that note, let's segue to talk about your nonprofit board experience. So you've been volunteering countless hours, probably in the thousands by now.
Probably.
So not only are you a leader, but you're an active volunteer. And again, you've been a strong champion and advocate. So tell us more about, being a volunteer and what it means to do something that is meaningful, purposeful, and also very fulfilling.
Well, I think part of that volunteerism has been as an activist. I, was in Los Angeles at the beginning of the AIDS crisis in the early 80s, and was part of the group of folks that were behind founding the AIDS Project Los Angeles, and meeting the initial issues that came from the AIDS situation at that time, trying to provide services and find resources and do, raise money. And that was my first experience as being a development person. So it was a great experience. Moving from that, like I said, one of my very first involvements in beyond that in Los Angeles was LA Valley College. And I was very pleased to be invited to be a part of their board of their foundation. and very diverse community there. Large Latino community, large Armenian community, large Asian American community. A real wonderful opportunity to work with young folks that were, trying to get that first step on that ladder to, really be able to make a difference in their education. At the same time, was involved with the Fair Housing Council of Los Angeles, which originally had been the organization that had finally gotten the rules changed so that African-American and Jewish people could live in places in the 50s and 60s. LA had developed a just awful list of rules and regulations that basically said African-Americans can only live in these few neighborhoods. And an interesting tidbit that I always love to pass on to folks is that one of the reasons Beverly Hills is the way it is because Jewish people weren't allowed to live in the other nice neighborhoods in Los Angeles. And then in the teens and the 20s and the 30s, they built Beverly Hills so it could be a place that was safe for Jewish people to live in. And in the meantime, by the time the 2000s had rolled around, we were really focused on landlord issues. In Los Angeles, there's these terrible slumlords that have large projects and large properties that do no maintenance and tell the tenants, if you tell on us, we're going to tell on you and we'll get you deported. So that the tenants are stuck. But it's also things like serving folks with disabilities. There was a landlord that didn't fix an elevator, and an elderly tenant died crawling up the stairs. And we sued and got almost $1 million for the lady's family. Didn't bring her back, but it definitely made a statement on on what could be done in that area. So a lot of different things, and then up in Mendocino County, everything from the botanical gardens on the coast to the Economic Development Finance Corporation in Ukiah, our local economic development arm. The college, I was actually rose to be the foundation board chair for a couple of years, and really proud to say that raised over $2.5 million in direct events and things that I was in charge of for scholarships. There in particular, we're really proud of the nursing program that the college had, because in particular, small communities really have a hard time keeping medical professionals in the area, and basically raising your own and providing the education in the local area provides jobs that quite often start at $80,000, $90,000, $100,000 after a 2-year stint in the community college nursing program. And so we really worked hard on that one, and very, very proud of that.
Well, Richard, I'm sure you can go on for another half an hour. You've done so much.
Tell them to zip.
So Richard, from the perspective of the future of community credit unions, if you were to look 10, 15 years ahead, what do you see the future looking like for credit unions and the banking system?
Well, I think one of the things with banking in general is that it's shifting so dramatically and so radically based upon most services being electronic. As a good example, I still bank with my credit union in Mendocino County. Everything is on my phone. Just made a deposit just a few seconds ago with my mobile, access option. Made my mortgage loan payment and a variety of other things. I transfer money to a couple other credit unions I'm members of, back and forth with there. So financial services are changing from the days when I was a kid, where you had to walk into a lobby and talk face to face with somebody and give somebody a check and get cash back. We have ATMs and Venmo and all these other things that make it so easy. So financial services are shifting. And if you look at a Bank of America, they still have all the big buildings, but most of them just have a wall of ATMs and telephone service at the branch. They don't even have real people anymore. So I think where credit unions are going to really be able to stand out is they're going to really need to be able to say that we're here to serve that local community process, that education process, the ability to be able to provide access to services to the communities that otherwise, aren't, being, attacked by, Chase or, Capital One or whoever else. And I think there's a huge opportunity there still. And in the meantime, continue to grow and adapt and, do everything that they can to stay electronic and yet still provide that one-on-one when people need it, because there's a lot of folks, whether they're 70 or, 17, that don't want to, try to do something on a telephone or on a computer screen. They want a real person to talk to, and they need a real person. And I think that's where credit unions are really going to still be able to stand up and do an amazing job.
Mhm. So Richard, in terms of if folks on the call want to follow in your footsteps to start working at a community credit union, and then they have aspirations, right, to be a manager, to be a senior, vice president, perhaps a CEO one day, what are 3 pieces of advice that you would give them if they're going to want to go towards this career path?
Well, first off, you're in a great area for credit unions. The Bay Area of California has some of the most progressive and wonderful, credit unions in the whole country. That are, the bleeding edge of, wonderful ways of providing service, but also super committed to their communities. Thinking of Patelco and San Mateo Credit Union and Provident and Stanford Credit Union. There's credit unions all over the Bay Area that are doing a great job and serving communities that really need the service. So, get an entry-level job at one of those. Try it out, see if you like it. One of the great things about the bigger credit unions like that too, wonderful opportunities for career pathing, because there's, so many, very specialized jobs in a credit union like that. My little credit union in Northern California had, 1.5 people in compliance. A larger credit union like Patelco probably has 20 people in the compliance department, maybe even more. I don't know. But there's lots of opportunities, and there's, lots of wonderful people that are been around for a long time that just love to mentor people. And that's something that credit unions are notorious for that standpoint, a perfect place to be.
Mhm.
The other side of it, though, is to get involved from the community side of it and come in through that door. So, if you're an activist in your community, find a credit union that's, willing to work with your interested groups. So whether it's, folks that are looking to get that first rung up on housing, or providing financial education, or getting access for farm workers, find a credit union that's doing that and get attached to them. That's another way to get in the door. But I'd say that there is a lot of opportunity for growth. And what I'm amazed to see is how many wonderful young people have come up behind me. There was a huge group of baby boomers that all retired in the last 10 years. And I was like, oh gosh, is there going to be the folks that are going to be there to lead these organizations? And the folks that have come up behind me have been amazing and are doing a spectacular job. So wonderful people to work with, learn from, and grow with.
Well, this is great. I just want to note, I'm going to hang out with you for another 9 minutes, Richard. And then again, for the folks on the call, if you have questions for Richard, please, enter them in the chat to Amy Coffey. She's going to curate a list of questions, and Trustee Malinali is going to ask those questions. So again, please, if you have questions for Richard, please enter them in the chat for Amy. Okay, so I have a few more questions, Richard. In terms of the foundation, so you talked about the foundation, community college foundation boards. I don't think most of our students here know what that does. So what is a foundation, and why would our students need to take advantage of those scholarships that the foundation provides?
The scholarships are the very first thing I would say. So most, if not all, community colleges in California in particular, I know that's been my experience, have a foundation or some other nonprofit organization that's attached to the school, and their general mission is to promote the well-being, the advancement, and all the good things that can come from the students succeeding at that school. And I was trying to remember the motto, or drawing a blank, the word I'm looking for anyway, that from Mendocino College, but it was to support student success. And highest and best of that is a long list of scholarships. And most community college foundations offer, tens of hundreds and sometimes even more scholarships, all aimed at, a variety of things. So, whatever your interests are, whatever your abilities are, there may be a scholarship that has your name on it. Whether it's, you're looking at nursing or auto mechanics or early childhood development or whatever your course of study, there's probably a scholarship that's aimed at your specific interest. But then there's probably one that's aimed at your ethnicity. There's probably one that is aimed at if you're part of the LGBT community. There's probably one aimed at ancestry in bizarre ways. There were some scholarships at Mendo College, and every year when they come out, it was like, there'd always be one or two people that would qualify. And, it's like amazing that somebody could check all those boxes. But, benefactors leave funds with the foundation with the idea that they're looking to continue that wonderful education process that community colleges do. And they may be a memorial scholarship to a son or daughter that passed at an early age. They may be memorial scholarship that's based upon, in fact, my dad was in the newspaper business and wants to make sure that people continue in that field. Nursing ones abound. There's, so many, folks and people that want to see, the nurse population succeed and grow. So those kind of things. The other side of it is that most foundations also are provide some kind of funding for programs and that kind of thing. So the kind of things where the budget cuts come from the state or from the local level for microscopes or for nurse shoes or the supplies they need in the auto mechanics area. It's a wide variety of things. And I know when I was at Mendo College, we usually had at least 10 or 15 of those kind of things that we approved. Might be a field trip for a group of students to go do something that pertains to their course of study. Could be any number of things. So those all, and then just the general promoting of the college. I know at Mendo we attended community service organizations and that kind of thing to talk about what's going on in the college, and we go out quite often with either the one of the deans or one of the instructors on a program to talk to Rotary or the Kiwanis Club or something like that, or the chamber, and tell them about what's going on at the college. So the foundation board quite often can be part of that PR effort as well.
Well, thank you, Richard, for expanding on that. For the folks on the call, we do have a CCSF Foundation here, and we do give out a lot of scholarship money. So again, if you have any questions about potential scholarship opportunities, again, feel free to email Amy and myself, and we can get you more information so that you can, again, apply for those free scholarship money. Okay. So two quick questions, Richard, and then I'm going to turn it over to Trustee Malinali. So the next question is, it's hard, right, Richard? It's hard these days. I mean, there's adversity, challenges. It's, people are falling on hard times, right? The flooding, the storms, I mean, there's just so many, hardships. So how would one overcome adversity to keep going, to just keep putting one foot in front of another? How do you keep moving forward?
That is one of life's big challenges. And, having been through some financial trouble, some health issues, a variety of things in my life, I'd say that one of the things is keep looking forward to the next day. What's going to get you through the next few hours, then, the next day, what's going to get you through the next week. Always looking to have a plan and be able to modify that plan and keep moving. But again, going back to something I'm a broken record about, building relationships. So understanding that there are folks that want to help just about everybody in our community, and finding those resources and understanding how to access those resources. And I wouldn't say how to work the system, but how to utilize the system to best forward your needs and your issues. There's not been a disaster ever that there hasn't been, a wide variety of aid available. I have two lifelong friends that work for FEMA, and folks, will quite often say thank you for your service to folks from our military and that kind of thing. I never hesitate to tell my friend Chuck, thank you for your service to FEMA, because he's in the front line. He's been down in Florida after the hurricanes last fall. Is a great example, and on the front line, making sure that community gets aid, that folks get the money that they're entitled to, and that kind of thing. That the damage is properly assessed, that they understand, how the disaster happened. FEMA is an amazing agency, and so accessing those kind of services, understanding what's available in your community, and then figuring out how to best utilize those to move yourself forward.
Well, Richard, it's the last question I have for you. And again, looking back right at your career, what are some truths, absolute truths that have gotten you to be as successful and as prolific as you have? You have a very prolific career. So what do you know for sure, and what would these participants need to know for sure as they take the next steps?
Well, not to sound like a sad old guy, but hard work is still one of the things that will always move you forward. Just showing up every day is half the battle, and so many people don't. And that's really one of the best things I can tell. Show up, because in showing up, you're showing you're interested, you're showing that you're committed, that kind of thing. And so many people aren't. So first and foremost, again, my broken record, but build relationships. Understand that that manager that is across the building may not serve you now, but if you can at least get them to know your name, that you can get some information so that you feel like you can converse it with them, can be priceless later on when you maybe want to move into their department. Building relationships in the community, understanding who provides the services. There's a wonderful group of folks here, the students that are organizing this event, building those relationships with each other, so that as you move forward in your education career, folks from divergent communities and from various parts of your college experience. You never know when one of those people is going to be somebody that you want to go, hey, remember me? And last but not least, it gets back to that honesty and forthright. That whole being trustworthy, being honest. It's not just trite and old style. It really makes a difference in the world. People can understand that they can trust you. People understand that they can count on you. Both priceless things. Whether it's a friend, whether it's a partner or your relationship, or whether it's something in work, those trusted friendships, that ability to know that you can be counted on. It's in my observation life, that's the most valuable thing I can say that I have.
Absolutely, I agree. And again, Richard, I look forward to seeing you in person to play
Same here.
pickleball next month.
There you go. Yeah, you bet.
So again, thank you so much, Richard, for taking time out of your busy schedule to answer some questions. We were just excited that you were part of our lineup, and again, I just cannot thank you enough for hanging out with us today.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity. Lovely to see all these young faces looking to advance and move forward in life, and I wish you all nothing but the best. And Jesse knows how to reach me if you ever need anything.
Yes.
Reach out.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, folks on the call, if you have questions, again, for Richard after today's call, please let me know. I'll be happy to connect you with Richard. Okay. Again, Richard is absolutely sincere, authentic, and just want to be as supportive and as resourceful as possible. So again, when we invite speakers, again, it's a very special group of speakers we're inviting. Again, last month we had Joshua Moon Johnson. Right before that, we had Ray Hino. So folks really care about you, and again, that's why they're here to share their insights about their journey and their leadership experiences. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to our student trustee, Malinali. Thank you so much for facilitating this next portion.
Thanks, Jesse.
Thank you. Saludos. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Malinali Villalobos, and I'm a current student and student advocate. Also the current City College of San Francisco student trustee. Thank you again for joining us today. And thank you, Vice Chancellor Lee, for inviting Richard today. And thank you, Richard, for taking the time out of your busy schedule to share your stories and experiences with us. We have learned so much from you, and we appreciate you for sharing your knowledge. So I see that there are several questions from the audiences. If you have any questions, please feel free to enter them in the chat to Amy, who is helping us with our questions and answers segment. For the next 20 minutes or so, I will be facilitating this Q&A portion. And I believe we're ready to start. Are you ready, Richard? Okay. Okay. The first question. How do you think your background in Alaska influenced you as a leader?
Oh, that's a good one. Really good. Growing up in a rural community provides you insights that you don't necessarily get living in a bigger city. And I've lived in Los Angeles for 30 some years. So I think I can speak well to that. You know, folks in rural communities have unique challenges and have unique points of view quite often. And understanding that and having lived that life for a period of time, and there's the military again. Having lived that life for a period of time really changed, I think, the you know, my thoughts. And when folks would say something, you know, later on about, you know, big city life, you know, you got to think that, you know, folks that live rural are in a very, very different situation than what you are. And people go, oh, yeah, I suppose you're right. So very much from, you know, just temperature tolerance to understanding that, you know, folks that live, you know, out in an area where they don't have any neighbors and maybe don't have access to broadband and that kind of thing, they're going to think and be a little different than folks that live next door to you in the city. It's priceless.
Thank you for that, Richard. Our next question. What is the most challenging thing you faced related to the LGBTIQ plus community or other communities? And how did you deal with it?
Well, personally, back in the days before there were employment laws and that kind of thing that provided some protection, it was a little scary. I actually have to say that one of the reasons that I left Alaska was there were no protections in the 70s for my community. And I worked at an organization where my CEO was strongly opposed to LGBTQ people and felt that, you know, it was probably in my best interest to you know, move on. Ironically, I moved to, you know, someplace in California that ended up being relatively conservative. I worked for an airline credit union for a period of time, but over time came out and was able to be kind of that voice. You know, I can remember, you know, being like the only guy in the California Credit Union League that was speaking up about LGBTQ issues and that kind of thing, back when it was just L and G. So, you know, very different. But again, I think, as I mentioned earlier, I think one of the reasons that, you know, I have the concerns I have for other folks is because I've experienced, you know, discrimination and crap in my life as well, for lack of better, more articulate ways to say it.
Thank you. Let's see. Is there a credit score number that banks are looking for when lending money for home buyers or to home buyers? And if so, what is that magic number and what does it mean?
Wow. Well, credit scores is a you know, probably a 12-month course that we could meet daily on and, you know, and chat on. But the basics of credit scoring is that, you know, we're looking at past behavior and using that as a predictor for future behavior. And so the way that credit scores are set up, the higher the score is, the score is saying that it's more likely that you're going to pay future obligations based upon your past behavior. Mortgage lending is multi-layered, especially in California these days. There is what's known as conforming mortgages, which are the ones that can be bought and sold on the secondary market. And those are the ones that you're likely to get at, like, say, Wells Fargo or Bank of America or from the average mortgage broker. And those generally are going to be at least a 680 plus score. Generally are going to be looking to have a history that includes auto loan and as much depth to the credit as possible. But there are lenders, and many of them are credit unions, but also many mortgage brokers that will lend to folks with more challenged credit. There are many federal programs, including the FHA program, that provides opportunities for folks with scores down to, I think, 580, which is fairly low. So there is not a one size fits all kind of thing. Best rate, conforming mortgage, you need a score over 700 and as much depth as possible. But don't let that worry you if you've got something less than, because there are other options that are out there and available.
Well, thank you. And thank you for those magic numbers. So the next question, you mentioned that the housing crisis of 2008 being a detrimental era. Do you think it's happening again during this pandemic era?
I think that there's some similarities, and you can, every expert has their opinion on this, and I'm just, all this is my opinion. But I think in 2008, I actually worked at a progressive, when we thought of ourselves as progressive, credit union in Southern California before I moved up north, that had been making 40-year mortgages and zero down mortgages and mortgages that had low entry variable rates with rates that would go up, thinking that the market was always going to continue to improve, and obviously it didn't. There were some places that really did criminal things that really set folks up to they knew they weren't going to win. But that's the difference now between then and now. The last 5 or 6 years in particular, mortgages have been pretty much on the straight and narrow. You had to prove that you actually had income. You had to prove that you had a job. You had to prove a credit score. The variable rates, that you might have a variable rate mortgage, but they weren't going to have huge changes in them. They weren't going to be ones that stepped up annually. So the mortgage portfolio that the banking world is holding right now looks very different than the one that was in 2008. That being said, the other side of the market is that especially here in California, there is so much demand for housing, and there's such a small amount of housing stock that although prices have plateaued a bit, and potentially I think could still go down some, the overall value of California real estate is such that I find it hard to believe that we'll see a huge crash again, just because there's X amount of housing and X plus number of people that want that housing. And so many communities are so far behind in building more. So many communities don't want to build more. So many communities, the price of new housing is priced out of the reach of even the top 5 or 10% of folks. So I think that that's a shift as well. But outside crisis, outside world events, a war that involved a greater portion of the world than just Ukraine and Russia, any number of things could obviously shift that drift.
Thank you. So we have about 5 more minutes for this Q&A. Again, if you'd like to ask Richard a question, please enter it in the chat to Amy. So the next question, one of the students wrote that they are inspired by your story and see that you had a lot of challenges in your career journey. The question is, what supported you and helped to keep you going in the most difficult moments of your career?
I think 2 things. One, I surrounded myself with really good people. I have a solid friend group that is, also high achievers and folks that have always worked hard, and they inspire me. One of my best friends is the worldwide brand manager for Lexus. And anytime I think I have problems, I think, Brian has to deal with car dealers in Russia and in Saudi Arabia, right? Like, he has a way different set of problems than I do. but having that, those kind of friends that to be able to go back to and chat over things like, I have this going on, especially there's a small group of LGBT CEOs in California, and it's almost like a little internal mafia. And we, supported each other a lot, and that group was priceless to me. The other side of it is surrounding yourself with mentors that are within your industry or within areas of your interest. And I've always been very fortunate to have had some strong and wonderful mentors that were folks that were on my team and I could call and reach out to for support. Attorneys, other CEOs, political figures that have been active in politics. So I'm very, proud to have some really great friendships with some folks that I feel are out there making a difference. And when, hit the wall, I'll be able to chat with them and say, what can I do? Where can I go? And again, priceless.
Thank you for that. Let's see, the next question. Have you ever felt underqualified to be a bank CEO because you don't have a financial background?
Oh gosh, yes. The first year in that job, I was sweating bullets almost every day. It's like, oh my God, they've hired me and all this bad stuff is happening out in the world. And, there's this huge financial crisis, and I inherited a staff that wasn't necessarily always the most professional, and technology issues, and, it's just every day, and I would go home and go, I can't do this. I'm not enough. And that's where those friends come in. They're handy, and it's like, no, you are enough. What do you mean you can't handle it? Yeah, that's stupid. It's having those folks to go back to and be able to, say that I'm having a tough day, and be able to talk it off with somebody that maybe has experienced something similar was priceless. But yes, I think every leader I've ever talked to, I remember I had a distinct pleasure of having an almost hour-long conversation with then Senator Barack Obama. And he was talking about the fact that, was thinking about the presidential run at the time and that kind of thing. They said, there's always that voice, of doubt. And you got to be able to overcome that, and surrounding yourself with strong people that, can continue to bolster you and hold you up. Very, very, very important.
Thank you for sharing that. Next question. How did you make sure your employees had the same level of integrity as you?
That was a hard one because, you make judgments when you interview a new employee, and look at their background and, see what they've done and look at their credit score and a variety of other things and go, okay, this is a person that appears, at least on paper, and appears in an interview to, be up and up. One of the things that I've always said was that lead by example. So, I always tried to be the person that, showed up, worked hard, never went back on, promises. And if something happened where we had to, change direction or whatever, would sit down and say, okay, here's what happened. This wasn't what we planned. Things, didn't materialize, or a grant didn't come through, or, we only made 20 home loans and we thought we were going to make 40 home loans, whatever the situation was. And when you can build that trust that's based upon, I'm not just telling you that something's gone wrong and therefore, we have hard times, but you really sit down and explain things to folks that, they're on your team. Building that kind of trust, a good person isn't going to violate that trust. And, that's what I always relied on. And from time to time, you still end up with folks that, go south or sideways or whatever, and aren't the person you thought they were. But in general, I've been very fortunate to have been surrounded by some really wonderful people in my career, and been very thankful for the teams that I've worked with. They've, in general, been amazing.
Thank you.
That's a great question.
Yes. So
That one, if you can figure that one out as a manager, then you've got the golden goose. If you understand how to find those people and source those people and keep those people close, it's priceless.
got it. Taking notes. Our next two questions are lighter questions. How many dogs do you have, and what kind are they?
I was going to say, well, two of them have been over here biting at me because they wanted to go out. I have two senior Chihuahuas that are ours, but my partner dog sits. And, in the desert, people travel regularly and so have all these precious little children that they want to go someplace safe. So on any given day, we have 6 or 8. So there's a terrier, a Wheaten terrier, a Chihuahua, a poodle, and a mix that looks like maybe a cross between a Jack Russell and a Chihuahua in the house today. And I just got off of spending 2 weeks with best friends, giant poodles. One of them weighs 75 pounds, the other one weighs 90. She's almost human size when she stands up.
Thank you for that. We're all trying to go like this to see if we could see them.
They're all sleeping over in the corner. It's like, they're actually being good for a change.
Okay, and our last question, we have time for one more question. It's a light question, or maybe it's a difficult one. I don't know. What is your favorite ice cream flavor and why?
Oh, wow. I'm more, if I was going to name poison, it would be pizza or donuts, but let's see, ice cream, probably cookie dough. And I like to eat the cookie dough pieces out. So yeah, anything that had cookie dough in it is a good thing.
Well, we're gonna have to join you on that one.
Oh, all right.
Well, thank you so much, Richard, for your interesting answers to the questions from our audience. And now I'm going to turn it over to Isabella, who will facilitate the next portion of our event. Thank you.
Thank you. Really appreciate it. That was fun.
Thank you, Malinali, for facilitating the Q&A portion of our event. And thank you again, Richard, for answering some more questions from the audience. We really appreciate you sharing helpful tips, lessons learned, and sage advice. I personally loved hearing about your experiences, especially your very long list of nonprofit volunteering. My name is Isabella He, and I am a clinical nutrition major and a credit student at CCSF. Now I'm going to facilitate the last portion of our time together, which is to invite you all to share what inspired you today or what you have learned from Richard. If you'd like to share, please raise your virtual hand in Zoom, and I will call on you. As we wait for the participants to sort of gather their thoughts, I'd like to invite my fellow facilitators to share what they have learned. Malinali, would you like to share your takeaways?
Yes, thank you. First of all, thank you, Richard, for the Q&A portion. I think one of my takeaways that I got from this sharing of your narrative and your story is the building relationships seem to be very important, and building relationships as in community, and that to me is also important because I see a lot of things that I do is always with community in mind, and building those relationships or building community is very important, especially in what we're doing and the work that we're doing. So that's definitely one of my takeaways from your sharing, building relationships. So thank you.
Thank you. That, like I said, I applaud your work there because so much goodness comes out of that.
Thank you, Malinali. We have Tayeko. Would you like to share your takeaways?
Thank you, Isabella. And thank you very much, Mr. Cooper, for your enlightening presentation. And I had many takeaways and tips. Especially, I like when you explain about the importance of a team building community, which I'm semi-retired. I'm in a kind of senior group, and I can still see your enthusiasm, even after you're kind of semi-retired, not so
Someone.
and semi, I believe in I also take some classes, some credit and then non-credit classes here, and I don't think I will ever stop learning. And I same energy from you, and yeah, again, thank you so very much for your inspiration.
Well, thank you. It's been a pleasure.
To take time out of your busy schedule, here to be with us. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tayako.
Thank you, Isabella.
Does anyone else have any takeaways they would like to share for Richard?
And if nothing else, if I could ask if you have any suggestions about what would make this better, or what else you might want to have heard. Obviously, Jesse can learn that, but if I have another opportunity like this, then I can be better the next time I'm doing something like this.
Why, we would love to see you on Cinco de Mayo.
There you go. Thank you. I'd love to be there. Yeah. Don't be shy, folks. It's this is a wonderful opportunity to be able to speak back to.
Well, I think everyone here probably would have wanted a little more time to hear about your super duper long list of volunteer experiences, and also maybe more in-depth experiences as a CEO for the credit union. I see Alicia has her hand raised. Would you like to share your takeaways?
Yes. Hi, Mr. Cooper. It's quite interesting to hear your career path and stories, and being from Alaska to big cities, which is big challenging. And I also can relate to your experience to be a CEO or a position which you think you're not qualified, or face a whole team of whole new team. Because I have a similar experience that I feel very frustrated to how to win the trust from the whole team, that I never worked with them when I came to a new company and had a position. So it's take great courage to do that. And I'm glad you succeed. And I learned a lot from that. Thank you.
Good. I'm glad, and I'm glad you, because that is a point, whether it's you're coming in as a CEO or just coming in as a new sales associate, or associate in any company. It's a challenging thing, and building trust and showing that, hey, I'm a contributor is difficult. It's a balance between modesty and being able to show your worth. It's a challenge.
Yes, I think leadership plays a great role here, and so that's why I'm glad that Geisce make this leadership program that can help us to build our skills here. Thank you.
Yes, I think it's inspiring. And I know some of the folks that have spoken to you before, and it's like they're great people, and I'm sure I had some really interesting things to say. So good stuff. Thank you, though. I really appreciate that feedback, Alicia.
Thank you, Alicia. Does anyone else have any takeaways they'd like to share? If not, I can share some of my own. Oh, wait. Go ahead.
Hi, thank you for such an inspirational talk. It's been super interesting, and I want to add some like takeaways from the talk. Is like the importance of like being surrounded by people that inspires you and empowers you, like the power of this empowerment of like that you are surrounded by. Yes. That it's like super important to have people saying you can, and you are the best, and that's for you. And yeah, I think that we all need to hear this. Yeah.
Well, and then also to be able to ask those same people questions like, well, what would you do? You know, and so I'm
Mhm.
really stumped here. You know, what do you think I should, you know, do tomorrow? You know, that kind of, I'm in the middle of a crisis. What do you think? You know, it's like, I've got my ideas. Do you got any better ones? Yeah. So yes, very, very valuable. I'm glad you picked up on that.
Mm. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We are at the end of this portion. Richard, if you have any final leadership advice that you'd like to share, this is the time.
Well, wonderful. And I just want to say thank you to all for, giving me your time today, spending this valuable time. I realize as students, quite often you've got a job and a family and classes and a variety of things that you're balancing. So I'm the one that should be thanking you for your time and listening to me. But I just, again, if I encourage you to build relationships, build friendships, build those tentacles in your life that will help you succeed, will all, lead to greater success and greater happiness and greater calm in the face of diversity and whatever as you may face. But in the meantime, I just want to say thank you for your time today. I wish you all nothing but the best of luck, and would be honored if any of you had further questions or anything. I'd be happy to chat later.
Thank you so much.
Thank you to all of you.
We are at the end of our time together. Thank you to everybody who joined today's Leadership Fireside Chat. It was truly an insightful learning opportunity. And again, a very special thank you to Richard for joining us today for this Leadership Fireside Chat. We are truly inspired by you and your stories and are honored to have you among our notable guests.
Thank you. Much appreciated.
Thank you, Richard. Again, on behalf of CCSF, I'm just so honored that you are here today. And again, hopefully you can join us on Cinco de Mayo to celebrate this certificate, milestone with our students. For the folks on the call, our next speaker, hopefully we are waiting for final confirmation. Our next speaker, hopefully, is the McDonald's Global Chief Marketing Officer. So we hope to have Morgan Flatley join us, and we will have again an amazing lineup the rest of this semester, and we already have a lineup for next year. So again, for the newer students, again, we hope to continue this program pretty much every semester. We're going to have different folks from different industries, and again, hopefully next month we will learn from Morgan, who is again doing worldwide global marketing for McDonald's. So thank you all so much. Have a wonderful weekend. And again, we look forward to seeing you next time. Have a wonderful weekend.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.